All right, team, welcome back to the Ask Maddie show. We are going to have a fantastic show today, getting into your guys' questions about Hbar, about Casper, some of our favorites here. And Maddie, just to kick off the show here, I saw some interesting news coming out of the Trump Truth Social account, talking about how he inherited Biden's stock market right now. So the stock market right now, we need to blame Biden about that in current market conditions. I want to get some of your thoughts on that. What do you think?
You know, it's always the favorite game that they all play where it's, oh, I didn't create the hard times. That was, the previous administration. Or, you see the vice versa. Let's say the economy's in a good spot, when they inherit it and they go, well, see, it's because of my policy I implemented. That's why the economy is doing well, right? It's always just this two-faced situation. Now, of course, did we already have, some weakness, overall in the markets because of inflation and a variety of other data points out there? Yeah, of course. But tariffs don't help the economy, right? Like, I don't think that we could see, tariffs increasing GDP, right? And if you also look at GDP for this last quarter, it's been negative, right? And Trump has been pretty much president for the better part of this quarter, and most of that has been tariff-driven, narratives that have really kind of put the economy as well as the stock market in a tough spot. We also know, just you guys can argue about it, on a political level, but like there's a video of Trump basically bragging to all of his friends about how much money they made by essentially crashing the stock market and then telling everyone to buy just
Is there a video?
handful of hours. Oh yeah, definitely. And he's this guy made this much money and this guy made this much money. They're chopping it up over in the office. So it's like whatever. Again, putting politics aside, guys, like let's not pretend that this is something that he's done accidentally or this is all inherited. Yeah, some of it inherited, but yeah, tariffs were 100% Trump's idea through and through, and that has not helped GDP at all.
Yeah, that has not helped very much anything. And so what we can do now is take advantage of it, but to come out and say, oh, well, it's Biden's fault. Well, yeah, there's some things going on in the economy, but the tariffs were caused big correction in the stock market. The 10-year treasury rose, impacting mortgage rates. So it has like a holistic effect here. And so it's impacted everything. So if we were just going to say that, I think it's Trump's fault, but I love it. I love it for the buying opportunity right now. We have a lot of questions to get into here, Matt. I'm very excited. So before we get into it, though, got to halt right there. Team, become a CryptoCharge member. Click the pin link down below. Join up at CryptoCharge. We're doing a lot of good things over there. Maddie's covering the shows. Always look forward to Dan's shows on Tuesday. A lot of insight there. Just a lot of knowledge on their team for your typical investor that is kind of maybe on the outskirts. I was telling Matt, I was listening to some people this week, and I'm just kind of unfulfilled with their analysis of the markets because sometimes they'll go look at charts and they won't go past the charts. Or they'll go to the, what's going on in the economy, and then they'll try to read that into the charts. And we know what happens when you do that. When you hear a news event, you try to read it into the charts, you're putting yourself in a tough position because then that becomes the only thing. Oh, this candle did this because of that type of analysis. And, that's not really good forecasting because you get to these big news events. It's like, well, if we have a big, if we have a big news event coming up, this could impact the markets, and we never really want to lean on news events like that. So you get a really holistic approach there. You get the charts, you get the fundamental macro news, and you get the community for your help for your general normie questions as it relates to crypto. So Matt, what code should they use if they want to sign up at CryptoCharge?
Yeah, make sure you guys are using code YouTube for a variety of reasons. One, I like to just know where you guys are coming from, and I know that a lot of you guys are watching our content here, so I'd like to know that it's valuable for you guys. You guys also get 50% off with that coupon, and that's not just for 1 month. That is moving forward. So if you pick the annual plan or the monthly plan, you guys maintain that 50% discount, and then it also comes with a 30-day free trial. So even if you guys find another code out there and you guys get 50% off, not all the codes include a 30-day free trial, but code YouTube does. So make sure you guys are using that one.
Absolutely. All right, let's get into the questions for today. Smith says, you have to buy Hbar right now just in case of the what if scenario happens. What if it hits $7?
No, I don't. Really, guys, like there's no you have to, right? Like if you look at all the narratives that people have piled into, because what if, right? What if Donald Trump does this? What if this happens, right? And more often than not, you look at the people that chase those narratives, and that's $100,000 Bitcoin they bought. That's a $3 XRP they bought, right? People buy into prices because they start to feel very good about it. So I don't really care if the what if happens, right? XRP could go to $100, right? It's possible it could happen. Probably unlikely though. One of the things that we look at, guys, is our Fibonacci's here. So like for looking quickly at the Hbar chart. back here, 21 high, and then you have the 22 low in here. We did a full retrace, right? We pushed up into that 618 in there, pretty close to actually a 702 retrace, and then we pulled back, and this was the buying opportunity. I told you guys this was the buying opportunity down here because it still offered decent risk to reward ratio. It was a rebalancing move. You guys can see though, from that level though, we are up about 50% from that level, so definitely not as good of a value as it was back down here at these levels. Now, if we came down and did a little bit of retrace, back down to like, 14 and a half, 15, yeah, maybe it's an okay spot. But again, look at our extensions in here, guys. And you guys can chop up however you guys want to take profit, but we usually do at least a decent sized TP here with a 1.618. That put us around a 90-cent HBAR. So a lot of you guys are looking at the market now and you're like, man, that's not a very big reward, right? Compared to what what you'd like to see. But a lot of us were DCA down here, 6 cents, 5 cents, 7 cents, right? So most of us are up a little over 200% as of current. So remember, guys, that your personal entry doesn't dictate how far something can go based on the reward that you want. So when we look though, even at our full extensions here being somewhere between like $2 and $2.30 from current market, right? That puts us closer to, like maybe a 10 to a 12x, which I really think is a fantastic reward to consider. What you're asking for essentially up here is not even the 8 extension. You're asking for the 13 extension. That puts us around a $7 price point. And you know what? Who knows? It could happen, right? But if you are banking based on, it could happen, or your favorite YouTuber is promising a price, which literally we don't do here, right? We talk about a multi-step exit because you just cannot, time and figure out exactly which extension is going to get hit. That's a crazy reward from current market, right? That would be a 38x opportunity from current market. Sure, maybe it can happen over multiple cycles. I'd be over the moon with a $1.50 to $2.30. So again, like, I don't care how fundamentally bullish you are. Like, for me, the risk to reward's not there right now, especially compared to other stuff. Now, structurally, if you got 12 to 13 cents again, you're giving yourself a decent risk to reward, but I would not be holding out for a $7 or $11 H bar this cycle.
Original says, is there any rumors of major stables coming to Casper?
So Sarson Funds has right now in the test net Casper USD, which is going to be a native stablecoin for the Casper network. That is just test net right now. But I would say probably one of the bigger abilities or bridges out there right now is going to be router protocol, which allows for one-click bridging essentially of stables from other chains onto the Casper network. Now, that will be some sort of like wrapped aspect of it, but at the end of the day, wrapped coins are just as good as the raw coins in themselves, as long as they are able to actually travel on a liquid network, which Casper is a very liquid network. So that's some of the things you should consider. Now, have we seen like natively like Circle or Tether come out and be like, yeah, we're putting all our effort into building natively on this chain? No, but when you have projects out there that allow for one-click bridging or for wrapping coins and then moving them over, just as good as far as liquidity is concerned.
Sam says, if you were to buy a crypto only on the fundamentals, which one would you pick?
Ooh, well, I mean, it always goes against my greater thesis of strictly just technicals or strictly just fundamentals, because you're leaving a lot on the table. If we were to be price agnostic, though,
Illuvium.
Right, Illuvium, right? No, microcap gaming coins. No, I would say probably XRP would still be my big fundamental pick. In the grand scheme. Now, $2.16, $2.20. I think that's very expensive right now. I would not recommend anyone buys this price, considering whatever. If you think from $2.15 to $7 or $8 is a great deal, and that's a trade you're looking to get into, fine, fantastic. But I think there's a lot of risk adding to this current market. But from a fundamental perspective, it's hard to look at the fintech giant Ripple and the way they're using XRP, the number of partnerships they have, the ETFs that we're getting. It's hard to be bearish on it, and especially considering that you've just had so much, preemptive hype around things like Solana and ETH, and a lot of it's been, not real volume, I would say, in the sense of like, meme coin volume doesn't equal real world utility, whereas the utility that you see that's happening on the XRP ledger is real world utility. There's going to be tokenization on the XRP ledger that actually matters, settlement of stocks, other types of things like that. So I'd say long-term bullish. If I had to be agnostic to price, I'd probably go XRP.
That's a good pick. Ali says, hello, I am from the Netherlands and have a lot of Casper because I believe in the potential of that coin. I even partly sold ADA and invested in it. I bought it at the bottom. What do you think this coin can go to? €1 or to its all-time high at 1.36 euros?
Yeah, so I would imagine that your actually pricing would be a little bit different because your denomination is euros. So you're mentioning the USD pricing. So just make sure that, if you're trading, especially in euros, that you're like trimming it up to be like according to that. Or if you're going to be trading on a USD market, fine, but like make sure that you are looking at the difference there, because there will be a meaningful difference. When you look at even the Euro USD pairing right now, like what are we sitting at? Oh, it's got me on Coinbase Advanced right now. There we go. Euro USD is putting us at a buck 13. So, right, so it's gonna be about a 13% difference. So make sure that you're aware of that. When we look though at the Casper chart and we kind of see what's been going on here, there's a lot of different ways you guys can look at this. And one of the things I always encourage you guys to do when there's gaps or imbalances that have been left behind and the reward between your average price and that imbalance is big, 8, 10x, 12x, I would recommend trimming there no matter how high your conviction is to $1, $1.36, whatever. There's a lot of different charts out there for Casper. We have here technically the all-time high on the aggregated chart is $80. I'm not shooting for anywhere close to that. We have candle closes here technically around $7. And then things get a little bit, a little bit ugly after that, right? There's not as much conviction after that. But you do have candle closes in here at, a buck 16, $2.12, $1.22, right? So there are some areas of confluence in there. So we could mark that up as, let's mark that bottom there as like $1.16. I would say that's like a fair area because you had 1, 2, 3, 4 decent candle closes in there that weren't just straight up down candles. And then we also want to, of course, start to like partition out some of the other areas of interest in here that we know are important. So you have obviously this whole area that's like somewhere between like 22 and 25 cents. You guys can see the support in here, big double top in there. That's going to get manipulated again in the future. And then you, of course, have our next major ceiling, which is going to be right around 5.7 cents. So we'll also mark up our floor in here just so you guys can see where we need to get back over. We talked about this on the previous show. Then you have kind of like almost a double bottom in here, technically a higher low. So definitely have created some stability in here. This is the area though where I'd recommend that everyone takes a consideration to take something off the table. If you look from current market up into that level, we're talking about a 16x, right? Like, do not be a greedy little goblin out here, right? $1.16, yeah, it's possible. And that puts us towards an 84x, but I would encourage you guys to consider taking 15, 20% off the table at least at this level, right? Do not be greedy when you're looking at 15, 16x's. And especially a lot of you guys have staking rewards. Take that into account as well, that you've been earning tons and tons of free Casper. Realize those profits, right? One of the things we can also do here, guys, is if we take a look at our local high here from 22 cents and then we go down to the low here. So because we had kind of like the double top in here, I said it's a pretty good top to pick from, even though we have higher levels in there. You guys can see that we get a pretty decent schedule here as well that you guys can look at. The 1.618 would put you around 36 cents, 58 cents for the 2.618, and just under $1 for the 4.236. So yeah, however you guys want to approach your take profit plan, I can't make that recommendation exactly for you of like, the exact amount that we're going to get to, right? $1.16, but like as long as we're scaling out and then we're leaving some for that moon bag of $1.16, $1.30, whatever, fantastic. But let's not take our position now where we're at 1.52 cent, 2.5 cent averages and then say 22, 36 cents. That sounds a little too early, right? To me, it's not. That's a ridiculous reward. Manage your risk, right? The goal is not to just manage risk on the entry, but also managing risk on the exit, and that does not include a one-step moon bag scenario for me personally.
This is not the casino, guys. You're not going to ride it all the way to the moon and sell the dead top. So make sure you take profits there. Asio says, Matt, GALA over ALGO with current market price? Question mark.
I'm sure that we're talking about primarily risk to reward ratio here for the most part. When we look at ALGO, I would say that fundamentally I'm more bullish on ALGO than GALA. GALA is a gaming token, which I know that gaming is going to make a big surge here in the probably coming months as everything gets a rotational opportunity. But as far as like long-term picks, things that I have a higher conviction in on a fundamental level, ALGO all day long. Also, the imbalance between 98 cents and $1.53 here on the ALGO chart is absolutely massive. It's around a 3.5x, upwards of almost a 6x to fill out that imbalance. If we were to strip all this away, not too bad, right? And we go swing high, swing low in here. We're below the 236, right? That is obviously an area of interest. We're also below that 30-cent mark, which is definitely going to be a big area for us to reclaim. The 1.618 puts us close to a 17x opportunity if we were to reach out towards like that $4 mark, and that full extension, if things do really well, is upwards of like a 48x, right? So this is a trade idea that actually is trading more like a micro cap or a small cap in the sense of like the overall reward that you can get out of it. Now, if we go ahead and pull up the GALA chart, which doesn't have as much liquidity as it used to, it's not being traded on Coinbase and a variety of other exchanges that was being traded on previously. One of the big imbalances that we talk about on the show when this chart is requested on our Technical Tune-Up Friday segment is that 236 up there, which is roughly a 10x opportunity towards that 20-cent mark. And I would definitely consider a heavy trim, if not a TP1, to be illustrated here towards that 20-cent mark. Now, things could get crazy here, right? Maybe you get a new all-time high here for the GALA chart. Maybe you get a crazy 70-something X reward in here. But remember, guys, there is going to be narrative and demand, and liquidity is also an important factor here. So at the end of the day, make sure that you're not just managing risk just strictly based on risk to reward. Make sure we're also looking at the fundamental use case of, if I had to take this back into the bear market with me, right? Things don't go well. World War III kicks off. I have to take these assets back into the bear market with me. How much exposure would I actually want in GALA versus Algorand, right? And for me, I'd rather be more heavily allocated in something like Algorand versus GALA games.
Okay, Maddie, so you're just safeguarding the fact of another bear market and not really get into higher prices there on Gala because of you don't want to hold a gaming token going into another bear market. That's why?
Yeah, and I think that there's just a lot of work to be done in the gaming space for this to actually become a very viable thing. You're going to need to see more of these big companies on board because they're just going to squash out these small competitors, right? You need to actually have marketplaces where these NFTs that are going to be traded on, that there's actually value behind them. So I'm not anti-gaming. I'm obviously a gamer myself, and I enjoy it, but I think that there's a lot of work to be done in this space, and I think that Gala had an enormous run when gaming was a very, very big piece in 21 and 22. It's just not as big of a focus this cycle around. AI is a big focus this cycle. Now, gaming can, again, and I think will have a big surgence. I have Illuvium as one of my swing trades, so I'm not anti-gaming. But as far as building large positions, I would much rather be heavily allocated in Algorand, something that is strictly focused on payments. And that narrative is not going away, right? Payments are not going away. Payments will be here tomorrow, the next decade, and the decade after that. Will this exact small niche model of crypto-based gaming be here in 10 years? Maybe, maybe not, right? So I just want to think about those things as well when I'm allocating to my long-term positions versus okay, I'm going to swing trade this as a smaller part of my portfolio.
I like that analysis right there, Matt. Yeah, all the cryptos are different. XRP, HBAR went ahead of most of the other cryptos that we hold. And so now we're kind of waiting for those to pick up again. But, those cryptos, I would imagine, are going to perform well than some of the older legacy coins like a Litecoin or Bitcoin Cash or, some of the other ones we talk about, just because of how front facing they are. So, so is there a thought in your mind where it's all cryptos aren't equal? You have to identify these cryptos and come up with a game plan, of course, like we do. But then think about okay, different take profit strategies at different Fibonacci's based on the, perceived, hype or the sector of the coin?
Yeah, no matter what we're looking at, when we see a chart that has a massive imbalance on it, for example, here on the GALA chart, we can see that there was support built at 20 cents and then there was just no buying opportunities, just selling all the way down. And we know that's a 10x. We should be mitigating risk there no matter how bullish we are fundamentally, just like with Casper, right? Taking something at 22 cents, 36 cent region is managing risk in a very responsible manner, regardless of, hey, $1.36, it's still possible. It doesn't make me less bullish on the smart contract narrative. It doesn't make me less bullish on the long-term growth of the Casper network. It's all about managing risk. So I do think, though, when you know that you're involved in something that's a little bit more niche, a little bit less liquid, has less liquidity as a whole, that you should consider maybe having a more aggressive approach where it's not just 3-step TP, maybe it's a 4 or 5 or 6-step TP to make sure that you're managing risk on the way out and at least paying yourself back. I think that's the biggest thing what you got to take away from this, guys, is protecting capital beyond just profits is a very important part of this game. So when you look at how much money you put into this and you're able to at least recover what you put out of it, you've done a very good job of managing your capital. Now we can be a little bit more risky. We can be a little bit more greedy, right? We can be a little bit more strategic about how we maybe approach those other later TPs, but we want to make sure that we're at least protecting our capital. And that's what really this is all about. When you see those imbalances, they're a very high area of interest that market makers are likely to manipulate again in the future. So let's make sure that we capitalize on that as we could potentially see a large knockback from there and may even give you an opportunity to reinvest and add at a higher low.
That's very good insight right there, Matt. Yeah, no one's going to fault you if you made profit on your investment, right? The problem is if you don't make profit on that investment, if you hold it going into another bear market and you're caught holding your bag again. And so we want to stay away from that, team. So manage your risk. You can learn that. I love the consistent investor strategy for that on the website. Go ahead and watch that because that's going to teach you how you need to be going mindset wise and actionable items for you to make money this bull run. Because if you don't have that, you're arbitrarily waiting for a tweet from us on Twitter or something, or maybe someone else. It's like, hey guys, it's time to sell. Then, you have a different average than that person. And then you made not that much money like we're talking about here. This only actually works, guys, if you DCA when we tell you, take profits when we tell you. I don't think we're going to sit here and tell you, we'll be here with you guys and say, hey, we took TP1, TP2, TP3. But if you guys don't do the whole DCA thing and you just buy whenever and then you sell with us, you're not making the same profit as us. So it's very important here. We talked about HBAR today, probably not the best risk to reward ratio. GALA, if you're interested in gaming, okay, go ahead, but it is a niche crypto. So, team, you have to take all these things into account. Not all of them are the same, and I do, you got to come to terms with that sometimes. Like when we look at our XRP with our HBAR, I mean, I am very surprised with HBAR right now, how outward they are right now. I mean, every single time I open up Twitter, they have a new announcement, they have a new partnership, they have something new going on. And I know you don't want to let that go to your head where it's like, oh, start changing the price targets on your crypto. But it is good to see in your crypto where there's actual utility coming to the blockchain. Where when we look at, I'm going to put these two in a category right now, and they're completely separate. Zcash and a Casper, like they're not that hype. I think even Casper has more hype than Zcash right now, right? You go on Twitter, you see more Casper tweets or Casper charts than Zcash charts, right? Zcash is not sexy, and you go on there. So it's like, what kind of approach do you take for that going into the bull run? Well, I definitely don't have the same TP standards that I have with my HBAR and my XRP, that's for sure. So you got to take that into account, team. But Maddie, any last words for today? This is the last show for the week on the public-facing YouTube here.
Yeah, of course, guys. Come continue the conversation with us over at Crypto Charged. We have a lot of great community over there. It's not just the website. It's not just a handful of educational videos. We also have our coin library in there where you guys have the opportunity to be able to see some of our example TP schedules that you guys can take with technical analysis updated regularly. If you guys want to kind of bring your generalized TP plan into the Discord and have people kind of maybe have a little bit of a sounding board with it, we do have a very educated community with a lot of investors that are not just new investors or young investors. We have a very big spectrum, I would say, of investors, and a lot of them have been involved for a very long time, and a lot of them have a lot of money in the market as well. So you guys are not just benefiting from watching our shows and using our educational content. We sincerely have a community that's very serious about their investing and isn't just gambling. They've been here for year after year, and they're very excited about how they're positioned now and have been very diligent in the bear market. So for some of you guys to at least just come and check that out, kind of meet some of those people, I think it'd be beneficial for you guys.
Yeah, team, don't get caught up in this whole like watching our shows twice a week and then not actually buying any crypto, right? Do not become that spectating investor where we love talking about these assets and then you forget to actually buy the assets and actually lower your cost basis and develop a meaningful position. The point here is that we are going to make money and set ourselves up, not so that we can, I mean, honestly, we're not here to just talk about the latest and greatest thing in just itself. We're here to talk about it and say, okay, what are reasons to buy this? Give me some of the best reasons I should be buying this asset. For Casper, unique low market cap crypto, big announcements coming up with it. XRP, I mean, Maddie already gave the XRP shill this like 10 minutes ago, but we have other cryptos that are in different verticals that are doing different things. And this is what makes it valuable to add these to your portfolio for the long term, because, crypto is going to expand. It's going to grow. You're going to see new sectors next bull run and the bull run after that. And you want to have meaningful positions. You don't want to just be, getting on the latest, new, greatest thing every single time, because that always doesn't really work out, So, team, be strategic, be smart. Don't be an idiot at this point. I know it's very, we're in a weird time right now. Like we talked about on the show about Biden and Trump right now, or who's crashing the stock market. It's like, team, if the stock market is crashing, your crypto prices are coming down. That should be exciting for you. You should be, take your kids' college fund. I'm just joking, but I would. I personally would take your kids' college fund and throw it into a meaningful altcoin for it to do well in the future. All right, team. Okay, I'm just gonna keep yapping if we don't end the show here, Matt. We're done, team. If you got something valuable here, make sure you leave a like, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye.